Hey folks, this is Craig from Acid Horizon, aka Surrepti, creator of the Philosopher's Tarot. And I wanted to take a moment to talk about this. Hegel appearing on the Devil card from the Major Arcana in the Philosopher's Tarot. Now, as I understand it, there was some outrage from some folks when they saw their hero grace this card. For them, it was rather unfortunate. But for me, it's hilarious and delicious. And any major disagreement that stems from this decision of mine, well, I think I should make it understood as to why I put Hegel on the Devil card. To be honest, first and foremost, I thought seeing Hegel's face on that card was just simply hilarious. And I did it mostly as a meme, I admit. But what's interesting is, once we started drilling down, and some of us started looking, for example, Adam and I from the podcast, we started looking at the meanings of the devil. We realized that there was a strong thread that connects the devil card to some of the work in Hegel, particularly what we see in the phenomenology of spirit. And one of the things, well, let's talk about the devil card first. Now, let's take a look at it again, because I think the image itself provokes some of the associations. Now, as I understand it, what we see here are two lovers, right, depicted as a male and female here, locked to this block. Notice, however, that the chains around their neck are quite loose. It looks like they could get these chains off, right? And above them is perched Baphomet, the figure of Baphomet, with the devil there himself, who's now Hegel. And he has this odd sort of hand gesture that has the symbol for Saturn on it. And some of the dominant associations with this card are things like the illusion of materialism, right? Someone who is so preoccupied with material demands, the desire for material things, money, sex, drugs, all of those things which are often the object of common addictions. But more importantly, it has to do with the fear and the anxiety that comes with losing those things. Also, there's a bit of a death drive sort of thing happening with the devil card. What do we mean by the death drive? Well, here I mean in the classical Freudian sense. The compulsion to repeat certain kinds of behaviors over and over. For example, in the manner of addiction. Or why is it the case that we cannot free ourselves from certain kinds of desires? And this card is often at odds with the notion of rationality. Now you'll see, well, let's pull the card out once again. This was one of the objects of contention, is that we have the pentagram turned upside down, the symbol of black magic on Hegel's forehead there. Now, the pentacle, or the pentagram, when it's inverted with a star side with the point facing upwards, often relates to the idea of a man or woman or a person, you know, with the arms outstretched and their legs outstretched, creating 5 points. And this figure, through the Christian tradition, has been associated with reason. And so often we think of reason being opposed to these baser desires, right? So already we're on the terrain of opposing the rational to the irrational. And if, by the way, I'm looking around because I see bear tracks all around here, and I don't want to get snuck up on, although I think they're denned up by now. I'm not sure. You never know. Where was I? So talking about the inversion of the pentagram, or the opposition of the rational to the non-rational. And what we discussed, or what I discussed with Adam, with respect to the work of Hegel, is this notion of the way of despair within Hegel. And you can find this in the introduction of the Phenomenology of Spirit, where Hegel basically says that the will to find truth, right, this pushing forward to absolute knowledge, involves, I guess, what we would call a sort of stagist or incrementalist approach to knowledge, where our coming to self-consciousness, through the acquisition of knowledge, involves this persistent negation of the previous forms of knowledge, right? And the realization that we were in error, and that we will always be in error until we achieve absolute knowledge. However, we cannot know the absolute until we ourselves are dead. Right? This knowledge comes to us upon our own negation of our radical singularity as particulars. And this is something that Bataille saw as a problem, because what the Hegelian system does is it forecloses upon our radical singularity to the extent that what we know to be our desires, our dreams, our ambitions, our reality, are rendered as a falsity. And this is a negation of life. And so for those of you who read the work of Nietzsche, you can kind of see how Bataille, for example, used Nietzsche's work, or at least encountered it as a way to sort of get leverage on the Hegelian side of himself, right? To overcome the problems that he believes stem from Hegel's system. And so what I assert is that this will to a rational knowledge itself constitutes a kind of desire. And it also constitutes a kind of bondage. I think what the devil card does is it kind of points out the sort of duality where, rationality can also be conceived as a kind of addiction. So that might be one way that we read it. To what extent, are we cloven to certain forces, ideas, beliefs in such a way that we cannot realize ourselves as radically singular, particular individuals? Inversely, how do our desires, whether they're sexual desires for financial gain, or what have you, perhaps the desire to pursue or keep certain kinds of relationships, how do those keep us in bondage as well? And so maybe what we're ultimately talking about is, how do we manage this flux between different kinds of desires, whether they be of a baser nature or of a more rational nature? And how does desire kill? How does it enslave us? And what is our particular path to freedom? Whether it's as individuals, as a group, as a culture, as a society, right? So I appreciate the fact that the Hegel card rankled some folks. In fact, I think he's emblematic of the very deck itself, in that it's a kind of heresy, and maybe a good reason as to why he appears on the cover of the box. So, let me know what you think. There are many different ways of interpreting the devil card. Some people say that it could refer to a large sum of money that's incoming, or some sort of large or significant transaction of a financial nature. There's a lot of ways to go with it. All right, I'll see you next time.